Going on, everybody? Haven't made a video in a while, so I thought I would try to make one tonight. Been a while, and I've been pretty busy, and we've all been doing stuff and trying not to get the Rona. So um, I have a couple things. I've got a chance to. It's actually for an old boss of mine, which is kind of strange, but he's now involved. I don't know if he's still an active paramedic or not, but he's involved with EMS education, and he's asked me to after probably about a year or more of trying to get after he said something about it initially, trying to get into the place that he teaches at and do the presentation that I've got that's on this channel that I presented a few different times. So I'll be able to do that tomorrow. Actually, today's Wednesday, and so I'm going over there Thursday night. So it's a good thing. He just called me, sent me a message today, and called me today, and so we work that out. And I'll be going over there to that. It's a college, it's just like a state college, and doing the presentation there. So he's got 5 EMT students. So grand total of 5. Last term there was 19, he said, and this time there's 5. But it to me the number isn't really an issue. It isn't the deciding factor whether it's 1 or 20 or 100. If one of those 5 starts to go down the road that I went down, and they've seen or they've heard what I've had to say, and they think back on it, hopefully, um, that's the thing. I mean, if I was, I'd like to think our situation's different, but I like to think that if I was in a situation that I was in formerly, and someone like me came to me before all that happened and talked to me, I probably wouldn't have done what I did, because that's a pretty, you have situations that happen in your life. You may have a clear and present kind of a danger point, I guess, a fork in the road of, do I do this or do I do that? It's a choice. It's a moral, ethical choice, but it's a choice, and it's a fork in the road, and you have to decide which way you're going to go down. Sometimes those paths are illustrated and known what's going to lead to. Sometimes they're not. You just have to pick. I don't think in this case or in any of these kind of situations that I'm talking about, though, that I've talked about in the past, that it's not known what's going to happen. So that really can't be argued. So got that going on, and he said something that, and it's been the first time that it actually happened that someone attempted to offer me money to do the presentation. I refused. I refused a couple of other offers as well, and sometimes it's either reimbursement for expenses, but the travel isn't really all that much to me. It's gas money basically. I don't charge for that even. It's something I'm doing of myself. It's something that I'm doing hopefully to help other people that are in that field, whether it's police or fire, EMS or nurses or whoever it may come to. I've had some contacts recently with some different agencies around the country because I've got this like form letter sort of thing going around, and I've reached out to some agencies and talked to them. They've said, thanks. We read and looked over what you've sent us, but we're not interested right now. Subject to change. So I've had some agencies contact me and talk to me about some other things related to that, and I've talked to them about that, of course. But so there's that. I guess the main topic that I have in my mind tonight is just kind of it relates to what I'm in school this term. Actually, I'm taking a course in college this term called parole and probation, which I think of any class that I'm taking in college, that if I were to fail that class, it'd be classically hysterical. So I'm not going to, but there's a lot of things that are talked about in there, and the professor is really great. He's from the same general areas from Tennessee, so we have some things in common as far as that. But it's pretty receptive. He's very well versed and very experienced, and I identified my experiences as they relate to the criminal justice system pretty early on in the class to kind of, I guess, give my standpoint on things. But over the course of this term, some things have happened as far as in the class, the syllabus, things that are the topics that are presented in the class that have really gotten some things going in my mind. And I've maybe said it before, maybe hinted at before. I'm not really sure, but for all intents and purposes, when I walk around every day, here in this area and in Kentucky and in the United States, I'm really not a citizen. And I want to have that sink into people because, and it's, it's a, it's a torn kind of a conflicted thing. And, when you plead guilty to a crime that's a felony, you certainly understand that by doing that, you're waiving your right to an appeal. They tell you all that. There's other things they say during that whole process, during that whole um, that process of pleading guilty to a felony. They tell you those things. However, there's some things that are called collateral consequences you may not realize, you may not get told about necessarily, and that's when some things can happen. The things that I'm concerned about, I guess, or that make me feel like I'm not a citizen of this country, aren't unknown collateral consequences. I knew that once I was convicted of a felony, I wouldn't be able to vote. Knew that, understood that. Wasn't isn't that I wasn't concerned about it. It's just I couldn't do anything about it. So, and also the right to keep and bear arms, as the Second Amendment of the Constitution guarantees. So, and there's other things that have happened that have stemmed from that conviction and that pleading guilty that I maybe didn't necessarily think about and or didn't know about, but those really aren't the things that are a problem. One kind of relates to the other in some cases. So, there's I have a son. He's 18 months old, and when he gets older, I'm not sure if it's going to be a thing. I know when I was younger, I went to not Boy Scout camp, but it was a camp used by the Boy Scouts, and it was a different thing. But one of the things we did there was 22 rifle shooting. Just I don't know, 8 years old, 9 years old, whatever. They gave us 22 rifle to go out and shoot. We had archery. I don't know if the political climate and the way things are going to be in some years are going to be conducive to that because of the way things are in the country overall. But I'd like to be able to teach him how to shoot when he gets older. I can't do that right now. That bothers me. There's places that I like to take him to. Namely, there's an Air Force base in Ohio that is. I went there when I was a kid in high school, and I can't go to the base. I'm prohibited because of my felony from going to a military base. So I mean, there's other things you may not think about that are going to happen when you plead guilty to a felony that are going to affect you later on. So, you know, think what you want, but this is my feeling and based on what I feel every day and what I see every day. As a convicted felon, you are, for all intents and purposes, you're a slave. I mean, you can own land. You can do certain things, but you're disarmed and your voice is quiet, and that's something that I think society needs to change. I think, you know, and while I can play devil's advocate and say one thing or another and look at it from different sides, I think when it comes down to it, if you're gonna try to reintegrate people into society, you can't do it half-heartedly, and that is what I feel like happens every day. And then so the results don't justify the expense paid to get to the results, if that makes any sense. So if you have an entire class of people that can't vote, and I say that, and the way it stands right now is that 3 states don't let convicted felons get their voting rights back, and that's one of the states that I'm in is one of those states, Kentucky. Iowa and Florida are the other 2. And there's other restrictions in those other states as well. And then you have things like violent offender registries, or some states have different other registries that you may have to join into or sign up for. If you don't, it can be a separate criminal offense in and of itself. So there's consequences of what you do, and they last long after. I can tell you that it's March, and my wife died in March. The events that led to me going to prison happened in March in 2009. So it's coming up on the 12-year anniversary. It's something that as soon as probably the new year starts, it's something I'm thinking about. Because in March, the closer it gets to that day, I feel like the more stressed, the more anxious I get. And I think more about things. I think about events that happened in the month before, and what we were doing. I had something happen, had a thought yesterday, actually, last night, and it stayed in my mind, and it started this progression of listening to music and watching videos that were very ruminative. I'll say they led to me kind of going back and forth and going back in time, and it wasn't a healthy going back in time. But that's how I deal with things. Um, so I think that needs to change. No amount of elections that I can't vote in are going to undo anything that's happened. They're not going to make anyone feel better. Um, while I can understand the gun right issue, speaking from a strictly, I don't know, strictly plain language or plain reading uh, component or viewpoint, there's nothing in the Constitution about convicted felons not being able to have weapons. It says the right of the people shall not be infringed. That's pretty absolute. Now that's been interpreted by case law and some statutes and some other things, but to me, those things are violated of the Constitution. Courts have held they're not. That's for another fight, another day with someone else. But um, if a convicted felon gets out, that was one of the questions we were just asked this past week. Should convicted felons who've served their sentences, should they be allowed to have the ability at some point under such conditions as whoever may decide, legislature, a court, etc. Um, should they be able to have weapons again? And I put pretty substantial response to that because for obvious reasons. But I have certain feelings about it. The professor agreed with me. You can make a time limit after a conviction or after someone's released from probation or parole. The other thing that I've learned, I probably should have learned this, but I really wasn't thinking about traveling to other countries when I was taking a plea bargain and agreeing to go to prison, and everything else that was going on at the time. But when you have a conviction for a felony, you're typically precluded from getting visas. It's not been my experience, but it's what I'm learning and from talking to others and reading, is that you're precluded from getting visas, long-term travel visas, to other countries. So as an American citizen, you can go to, whatever country it may be. But the problem you're going to have is if it's for some reason they decide to ask you, hey, do you have a criminal background? Or if they check you through something like Interpol or NCIC, a criminal database, and your name comes back, they can refuse you landing rights. They can say, you can't come into our country. We don't want felons, criminals in our country. And that's totally within their rights. But again, that serves to keep people from doing things that otherwise they'd be able to do. A thought of mine was travel to another country and go there, make a life of myself, in those other countries. Had one in particular picked out, but do some research. I don't know if that's going to be possible. I can go there probably if I don't get refused at the airport. That would be bad. But things change when you have a conviction for felony, and some of those things are for the better, I think. Most of them are for the worse, and that's what I've learned in my time and in my experience in the last over the last several years, is that a lot of those changes aren't good. A lot of those things you're restricted from doing aren't good. And I guess it gets to the point of if you're gonna commit a terrorist act, for instance, and I'm not saying that I'm going to because I'm not, but if you're going to commit a terrorist act, are you really going to care about the weapons charge when you're going to blow up a building? You're not. So if a convicted felon, and you see the news every day, there's shootings that happen every day across the country, and convicted felons possess guns and they shoot people. People that have records, people that don't have records. They shoot children, but so do people who have no record whatsoever. So that's another issue entirely in and of itself. But I think for the average person who's a convicted felon to be able to be denied the right to defend themselves, which is one of the rights that you have, is to live your life, to be secure in your person and your place, your possessions, to live your life and defend against someone who would do you harm, to self-defend or to defend your family. When you're a convicted felon illegally, you don't have that right. There's all kinds of things you can try to combat if a charge is levied against you. But in the end, it's going to come down to you versus a jury, and jurors are people that couldn't get out of jury duty. So don't have to have an opinion of the jury system in this country. I went round and round, but with a professor a couple terms ago about that whole concept about the jury system. So it's an evolving process, and I wish I wish things would change. The way they are now is the way they are, and they are the laws. I don't break laws anymore. Laws are not for breaking. So until that status or that situation changes, I'm going to feel the way that I feel. And even after that, I don't think to permanently effectively remove a person from society and then to have them rejoin society with none of the rights or benefits of society is hypocritical. It doesn't lead to good results. And if you have people that are out, that are living their lives and that are doing the right thing, working, not getting involved in criminality, not doing drugs, not hurting people, I don't really see the harm, I guess. There's probably a better word for that, but I don't see the harm in precluding them from the society that you confess to allow them to reenter. They call it reentry, and they get a bunch of money for it from the government. They don't really do anything, and that's the problem, I guess, that I have. So it's pretty much a gripe session, but some interesting stuff, I think. So I'll try to get more content on here, and hopefully get more people to watch these, because it's another problem is that I only got 12 people watching, and I don't know if they're actually watching or not. I haven't looked at the analytics. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, critiques, feedback, take anything. Thumbs up, thumbs down, something. Put them down below in the description or in the comments. I keep saying that. I've been doing this for a little bit. I got like 40 videos up here now, and I keep saying that still. It's a habit, I guess. So if you have any questions, comments, etc., leave them down below, and I will certainly respond back. So everyone have a safe day. Be careful and take care of each other.